Hello class. We're going to do some more factoring. We are going to be factoring by grouping, but more specifically we're factoring trinomials, which means they have three terms. Now, some of y'all are like, well, how is this different and how are we going to do this? This doesn't have all the stuff we need. It's like, yeah, you're right. So we got to fix this. And the way we're going to fix this, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. What I'd like for you to do, I'd like you to write your x squared, skip some space, and put the plus 6. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the key to doing this is this plus 6 right here. This plus 6 is going to help us factor by grouping. So what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to list the factors of 6. In other words, what can we multiply together to give us positive 6? Well, we can multiply 1 times 2. 1 times 6, I'm sorry, still sleepy. 1 times 6, or 2 times 3. Now there are no other factors of 6. It's just 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look at the middle number here. 5. Which one of these numbers will add to 5? If you said 2 and 3, you'd be right. So what we're going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to take this 2 and 3 and we're going to write them in here. And you can put it in any order that you want to. Let me suggest this order. I'm going to suggest that you write it as plus 2x plus 3x. Because if we write 2x plus 3x, that will give us this 5x. Alright, now this problem looks like the problems we had just finished doing. What I'd like you to do, I'd like you to look at the first two and ask yourself, what's common here? If you say the common factor here is x, you'd be right. If we take out an x from x squared, we're going to be left with x. If we take out an x from 2x, we'll be left with plus 2. Now we're going to go back here and look at these factors. I mean, the greatest common factor here. If you said the greatest common factor is 3, you'd be right. And if we factor out a 3 from 3x, we're going to be left with x. And factoring out a 3 from 6, well, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And remember, when we factored by grouping, we always had two things that were common on either side of the plus sign. So now we simply just take that common factor, x plus 2, and in the set of parentheses back here, we write everything that's not inside the parentheses, which is our x plus 3. And this is our final answer. In other words, if we were to take x plus 2 times x plus 3 and do it by windows or FOIL, we would get that trinomial right there. X squared plus 5x plus 6. Okay, once again, we're just kind of going backwards from multiplying the binomials to actually factoring them. All right, let's look at our second example. All right, our second example is x squared minus 7x plus 12. You might notice that the previous example had all positives. Now I'm throwing in a negative. How does that change stuff? Well, we're still going to look at this back number right here. Positive 12. First, let's write down what I asked you to write down earlier, and that was, let's write down the x squared, skipping some space, putting the 12. Now we'll find the factors of 12. Well, 1 times 12 will give us 12. Let's see. 2 times 6. We also have 3 times 4. Now, these are the only factors of 12. Ladies and gentlemen, when this term is negative and this term is positive, we have to remember that we're dealing with two negatives. And you're saying, well, sir, why are we writing two negatives? We're writing two negatives because a negative times a negative is still a positive, but we want to add these together. Remember, we want to add these together so that that will come out to this middle term. Okay? So in other words, the factors of 12 have to be such that we're going to add them together and get this middle term. Which one of these pairs will add to give us negative 7? If you said the negative 3 and the negative 4, you'd be correct. Because negative 3 minus 4 will give us negative 7. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to write negative 3 x minus 4x. And now we're going to look for the greatest common factor. In the first, turns out that that's going to be x. We'll be left with x minus 3. And the greatest common factor here, and this is where we got to be really careful, especially with negatives. We're going to factor out a negative 4. If we divide negative 4 by negative 4, we'll get positive 1x. If we divide positive 12 by a negative 4, we'll get negative 4. Okay. Sorry. Negative 3. Sometimes I don't know how to divide. And remember I said that you're going to have common factors. You're going to have common factor here, and you'll have a common factor here. Okay? So now we'll take that out. And we'll write down whatever's left over outside the parenthesis. And this will be our final answer. Okay, and you could check your work by doing Windows, and if you did Windows or FOIL or whatever arrows method you use, you'll see that you're going to get this answer back. All right, let's go ahead and go through the next examples, because again, we're changing things up. We now have a positive and we have a negative. Okay, we're still going to do stuff the same way though. Ready? X squared, skip some space, negative 18. Looking for the factors of negative 18. When you look for the factors of negative 18, remember, we're going to have a 1 times a negative 18, or it could be 1 times a negative 1 times positive 18, because remember, one of them has to be negative. Or maybe we have 2 times negative 9, or negative 2 times positive 9. Let's say we had a 3 times negative 6. Or maybe it's negative 3 times positive 6. You see, all of these are going to multiply to give you 18. And let's see, are there any other factors of 18? No. And before we go any further, let me go ahead and make a really quick correction. It's not 6. What I meant to put here was 3. Sorry about that. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we have the factors of negative 18. One has to be positive, one has to be negative. And the way we're going to choose our factor is, remember, when we combine them, when we add them together, they have to add up to our positive 3. Well, if I add negative 1 and negative 18, or positive 1 and negative 18, that's not going to get me 3. 2 minus 9, negative 2 plus 9, that's not going to give me negative 3. It turns out one of the, or positive 3, one of these is going to give me the positive 3. So, ladies and gentlemen, put in your calculator, put 3 minus 6, and then put negative 3 plus 6. One of these is going to give you positive 3. It turns out that negative 3 and positive 6 will add to give you positive 3, and when you multiply them, will give you negative 18. So we're going to write this here, and you can put it in any order you want to. So I'm just going to put negative 3x plus 6x. And then we're now going to factor by grouping. What's common here? Well, we got an x common. So we're left with x minus 3 in the parentheses. And here we're going to have a 6 common. So x minus negative 18 divided by 6 is a negative 3. And look at that. We end up with this here and this here. So we're going to factor that out. And whatever's not inside the parentheses goes inside the second parentheses. X plus 6. And this is our final answer. Okay? Again, we're looking at these numbers and we have to consider all the possibilities, because we never know. It might be one of the other factors next time. Let's look at example 4. Wow, more negatives. Not a problem though. So let's go ahead and start this off like we usually do. Let's write our x squared, our negative 24, and looking at our back number here, we know that it's one of them's got to be positive and one of them has to be negative. Now it's either going to be this one or it's going to be negative 1 times 24. How about 2 times negative 12? Or negative 2 times positive 12? Or 3 times negative 8? Or negative 3 times positive 8? I think there's more. 4 times negative 6? Or negative 4 times positive 6? And those are all the factors of negative 24. Remember, we're looking for them to combine or add together to get negative 5. Well, it's not going to be 1 and 24. It won't be 2 and 12. 3 and negative 8. Hey, one of these will work. 4 and 6 won't do it. Okay. So let's see. I want a negative 5. So the negative 8 and the positive 3 is going to be our combination. Because if you take 3 minus 8, you'll get negative 5. Alright. So let's write this in there. We're going to write plus 3x minus 8x. Okay? And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and look at our common factors. Here, common factor is x. This will leave us with x plus 3. Now the common factor here, we got to again be very careful. We're going to factor out a negative 8. If we factor out a negative 8, we'll be left with x. And negative 24 divided by negative 8 is going to give us a positive 3. We're left with a common factor of x plus 3. And whatever's not inside that parentheses is going to be inside this set of parentheses. X minus 8. And we have our final answer. Alright, so for the next two examples, ladies and gentlemen, pause the video before I start explaining it and try doing it on your own. And again, I'll just keep running through the video. I'll just keep going and doing the example. But I want you to pause the video, see if you can try listing the factors at least. Alright, here we go. Hey, this is great. Everything's positive. So, I don't have to worry about any negatives in this case. Alright, here we're going to go ahead and look at the factors of 48. Turns out there's a lot of factors of 48. So let's go ahead and write these guys. Let's see. 1 times 48. 2 times 24. 3 times 16. 4 times 12. 6 times 8. And that's it. This has a lot of factors. But remember, we want factors that are going to add to 19. Wish I had a bell sound. Ding, 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 ding. It's going to be 16 and 3. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and write our x squared. Space it out. 48. Let's put these factors in there. Plus 3x plus 16x. Common factor here, x. And we'll be left with x plus 3. The common factor here, it's 16, which will give us x plus 3. X plus 3 has been popping up a lot lately, huh? Coincidence. That'll be x plus 3. And x plus 16. When they're positive, super awesome, super easy. We don't have to consider any negatives. We don't have to worry about, which one's going where. So there you go. Last example, ladies and gentlemen. Again, pause the video, see if you can write the factors. And here we go. I know I keep skipping this step here. I'm going to go ahead and write this here. Part of the reason why I do this is it reminds me to look at this back number. This back number is negative. So this is where I have to do the positive and negative sides. So I'm going to say positive 1 times negative 45. Negative 1 times positive 45. 3 times negative 15. Negative 3 times 15. I believe we're going to have 5 times negative 9. And then negative 5 times positive 9. I believe that's it. So now, which of these combinations, when you add them together, will give you negative 4? Or positive 4. Jeez. Well, not the first two. Three and 15, no, that's negative 12, no. It's got to be one of these. So put 5 minus 9 in your calculator, put negative 5 plus 9 in your calculator, and you'll see that this combination is the winning combination. So we're going to write negative 5x plus 9x, and now we start to factor. Common here is x. X minus 5 is left over. The common factor here is 9. We have x, and you guessed it, minus 5. So now look at here, look at here. Whatever is not inside that parenthesis is going to go inside this one. That's going to be our x plus our 9. Now in class, I'm going to go ahead and go over this method, but I also want to remind everybody that there's another method, and it's called guess and check. But we'll be doing that in class. Thank you for participating. Don't forget to reply done.